Hello everyone, welcome to Tech with Machines. I hope you are doing great and welcome to today's topic, which is Python Async Context Managers. Without any further delay, let's deep dive into it. Before we go into Async Context Managers, let's first understand what context managers really are. Context manager is basically a construct in Python that provides a way to manage resources efficiently. It will allow you to allocate and release resources effectively and in a more efficient way. The most common use case can be managing I/O operations like database connections, file streams, or logs. They are generally used with the with statement to ensure the resources are properly released after their use or usage, even if an exception occurs. So let's try to understand that with a basic example, which is managing I/O operations. You might have written this code multiple times but might not have understood what really it means. If you haven't, let's understand that now. We'll do a basic file opening and read the content and understand how a context manager is basically designed or coded in that particular example. Here I have created a very simple file named file IO context manager, and what we are trying to do here is we are opening a example.txt file as with a read access, and we're reading the contents of that file and printing it. So as you can see here, basically open is allowing us to create a file object, and by using with statement we are ensuring that the file is properly closed after this block of code is executed, and even if the exception occurs, the file will be properly closed. So that's how the resources are managed efficiently, and this is one of the very basic example of context manager in Python. So if anyone asks you a very basic example of context manager, then you can pretty much explain this as an example, and you would have used this if you are a Python developer. You would have used it multiple times. Now what it is about context manager, how we can create a custom context manager. So basically what happens is, here if you can see here with the open function, it is allowing us to give a file object and also allowing us to enter a runtime context where we are basically executing or reading the data and then basically exiting this runtime context, and that's how any custom context manager works. Now if you see here, I've already created a custom context manager class. What I'm trying to do is, it is implementing two special methods called an enter and exit. In enter, it is entering the context. If you want to do a database connection, then we can do. We will also go through that example also. But as of now, you can see that if I want to enter a context, and I have an enter method, and if I want to exit the context, and I have the exit method, as well as along with it I have the exception type, exception values as well. So if at all by any how there is an exception or there is an error in basically allocating the resource or acquiring the resource, I will it will actually allow us to even handle the exception gracefully after exiting the context. So if I run this now, I'm already in. So if I run this now, let's try to run it. We will do Python, we'll do the terminal run, and we'll do Python custom context manager.py, and as you can see, it is entering the context, it is then executing whatever is in the runtime context, and then finally exiting the context. And if by any chance there was an exception, then it would have really printed that exception occurred. So this is how you can create a custom context manager, or this is how actually a context manager works. Now let's talk about the async overview. Async context manager are again the special context manager which allow you to work in asynchronous mode. They generally use async with statements, and does exactly same thing, allow you to set up and tear down or manage resources in an asynchronous manner. So what are the real benefits of using asynchronous context manager or context manager, if at all? Firstly, resource management, efficient resource handling, they're properly managed, and even if exception occurs, they can basically ensure that they are closed properly. Even asynchronously, context managers allow you to do asynchronous operations, and they make code more readable and maintainable by abstracting the resource management logic. As you saw that there is a specific methods which we implement to identify the runtime context. Now let's try with a very basic example of async, which we'll do managing database connections, because that's a very popular example of using an async context manager especially. So as you can see here, I created a class called async database connection. I have really not created a connection as such in this. I'm just trying to mock it or show you exactly how a database connection can be used in terms of context manager. So what I have done is that I have created a constructor which is just taking a database name, and as explained earlier as well, that there is an enter method and there is an exit method. In the enter method, it is trying to connect to the database. Here I'm just doing a sleep method to mock that there is a connection acquired. Generally here you will be actually acquiring a database connection, and then finally it is connected to the database and giving the connection, returning the connection object. And in exit, it is trying to close the connection. Again, try to mock it here with the sleep method, and if exception occurs, then you are basically printing the exception. And finally the fetch data, where actually the query happens, again mocking it with the asyncio.sleep. And in short, when I'm trying to create the async database connection, it is with async with as a statement, and we are trying to call the fetch data and finally fetching the data. Now if I run this one, exactly it is going to run as custom context manager, but let's try to run this particular Python file, and you can see that it is trying to connect, enter the context, then connect it to the database, and finally it's fetching the database, executing the block of code, and then finally exiting the connection. So this is how basically you can create an async database connection if you want. This is just an example of how you can how I have simulated it or mocked it, but this is how you can create using the context manager async database connection. I hope you liked this video, and I hope it helped you to understand a little bit about async context manager. If you have liked this video, please feel free to subscribe and like the video, because it helps me to it motivates me to create more videos for you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.